Have you ever thought about how a single ordinary day can suddenly twist into something that feels like a nightmare you can't wake up from? That's exactly what happened to me. And trust me, by the end of this story, you will question what family, loyalty, and even trust truly mean. Before I begin, let me ask you, where are you watching this from right now? I love reading the comments from people all over the world, so drop your city or country below. And as the story unfolds, I like you to rate it at the end from 1 to 10, because this isn't just any story. It's the kind of moment that changes a life forever. It all started on what I thought was going to be a peaceful afternoon. I had just finished running some errands, nothing unusual, and my son, who had been unusually quiet that day, suggested we go grab something to eat. He proposed this cozy-looking restaurant that had recently opened in town, the kind that had a warm glow coming from the windows and a big sign boasting about their chef's special menu. I didn't think twice because going out with my son always felt like a way to bridge the growing distance between us. You know, kids grow up, they drift into their own world, and sometimes you try to cling to whatever little moments you can get with them. So I agreed. We walked in together, and the place was surprisingly quiet for the hour. The staff greeted us politely, and we found a table near the window. Everything seemed normal, too normal, in fact. But if I had paid closer attention to the way my son kept glancing around, as if making sure no one he knew saw him, maybe I would have sensed something. We ordered our food, some light dishes, and I asked for a simple glass of juice. While waiting, we exchanged the usual small talk. I thought we were bonding, but his words were distracted, like his mind was far away. At one point, he excused himself to step outside, saying he had to make a call. I didn't think much of it. Kids these days are glued to their phones, right? But that's when the first subtle red flag appeared. The juice arrived, cold, refreshing, with condensation sliding down the glass. I absent-mindedly stirred it with the straw while waiting for him to come back. That's when a man in a uniform, the restaurant's security guard, approached me carefully. He leaned close, his expression carrying a strange mix of urgency and hesitation, and whispered words that made my heart jolt into my throat. "Ma'am, I saw him. Your son. He poured something into your juice." For a moment, I couldn't even breathe. The words the security guard had whispered echoed in my head, bouncing back and forth until they didn't sound real anymore. My son? My own son? I turned my eyes slowly toward the glass of juice sitting there on the table, droplets still rolling down the sides, as if mocking me, daring me to take another sip. My fingers tightened around the edge of the table instead, because suddenly it felt like the entire restaurant had shifted, as if the world itself tilted into something darker. I wanted to laugh it off, maybe even tell the guard he was mistaken, but there was something in his eyes that told me he wasn't lying. He was deadly serious. "You're sure?" I asked in a low voice, my lips barely moving. He nodded once, firmly. He didn't stutter, didn't hesitate. My pulse quickened, my chest felt heavy, and I remember thinking, what reason would this stranger have to invent such a story? Unless he truly saw it. And then came the rush of emotions. Disbelief, confusion, denial, fear, all colliding at once. My son returned to the table just a minute later, sliding back into his chair with that practiced calmness teenagers, where when they want to pretend everything is fine. But I saw it now, the flicker of nervousness in his eyes, the way he avoided looking directly at me, how he kept glancing at the glass. Suddenly, his casual "Did the food arrive yet?" felt loaded, like every word was part of the game I didn't know I was playing. My hands trembled under the table. Should I confront him right there? Should I demand an explanation? Or would that make him shut down and deny everything, leaving me with no answers? I forced a small smile, hiding the storm raging inside me. "Not yet," I murmured, and I gently pushed the juice aside, pretending not to notice. His eyes followed the motion, and for the briefest second, there was something like frustration on his face, a shadow that slipped out before he caught it. My mind screamed 1,000 questions. What had he put in it? Poison? Drugs? Was this some kind of cruel prank? Why would he even think of doing this to me? I had raised him, sacrificed for him, loved him more than my own life. And yet, could it be that somewhere along the way, something broke between us? My stomach churned at the thought. I couldn't let him see I was suspicious. Not yet. I needed time. I needed to think. So I sat there, making small talk about nothing, my heart racing as though every word might trigger an explosion. When the food finally arrived, I pushed the juice farther toward the corner of the table, claiming I wasn't thirsty anymore. I thought that might ease the tension, but instead, I noticed his jaw tighten, his hand twitching as if he had expected me to drink it by now. That tiny gesture sent chills down my spine. There was no mistake. The guard had been right. My own son wanted me to drink whatever he had slipped into that glass. The drive home that night was unlike any other I had experienced in my life. The steering wheel felt cold beneath my hands, even though the heater hummed inside the car, and my mind raced with questions I was too afraid to ask aloud. What could my son, the boy I raised, the one whose first steps I celebrated, whose scraped knees I bandaged, possibly want to do to me? The words of the security guard echoed in my ears like a broken record. I saw him pour something into your juice. That phrase refused to leave me. No matter how hard I tried to silence it with rationality. Maybe the guard was mistaken. Maybe he misread an innocent gesture. Maybe my son dropped sugar or some silly additive into the glass as a joke. But then why the secrecy? And why had my son rush me out of the restaurant when the guard caught my attention? The more I thought about it, the more impossible it became to excuse his behavior. I glanced at the passenger seat, half expecting him to be sitting there, smirking as if he knew how deeply unsettled I was. But the seat was empty, and I was left alone with the shadows of doubt creeping across the dashboard. I tried to focus on the road, but memories kept flooding back uninvited. Times when he had borrowed money without explanation, moments when he came home with expensive gadgets I never bought him, the coldness in his eyes whenever he thought I wasn't paying attention. Each fragment now wove itself into a darker narrative I had refused to see, a puzzle I had neglected until this moment. The house seemed unusually silent when I stepped inside, every creak of the floorboards beneath my feet magnified. I went straight to the kitchen, pulled out the glass I had brought home from the restaurant, and stared at the liquid inside as though it might answer me back. I debated calling the police, calling a friend, even calling him to confront the truth directly, but fear tied my tongue and still my hands. I set the glass on the counter, staring at it like it contained my fate, wondering whether I should test it or pour it away. In that silence, every sound outside, the wind brushing against the windows, the faint bark of a dog down the street, felt like an omen of what was coming. And yet, deep in my chest, a strange resolve began to stir. If my son was hiding something, I was going to uncover it, no matter how painful that truth might be. That night, I barely slept, tossing and turning as my mind spiraled between fear, anger, and disbelief. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, and every time I closed my eyes, I imagined that glass of juice sitting there on the counter, glowing like some cursed relic daring me to confront it. By morning, my nerves were shot, and I knew I couldn't just ignore what had happened. With trembling hands, I carried the glass into the bathroom, poured a small amount into a clear plastic container, and sealed it tightly. I didn't know exactly what I was doing, but instinct told me this was evidence, something I might need later. My heart pounded as I thought about calling the police again, but my own fear of being laughed at, or worse, ignored, stopped me. What if they dismissed me as paranoid? What if they said there was nothing in it, and I had ruined my relationship with my son for nothing? Yet another thought, far darker, clawed at me. What if they tested it and found something lethal, something that could have ended my life that very night? That question alone made me shiver. Later that afternoon, my son came home as though nothing had happened, dropping his backpack by the door, humming to himself. He walked into the kitchen, and I swear I saw his eyes flicker to the counter where the glass had been. His expression shifted so quickly I almost thought I imagined it. A flicker of surprise, maybe annoyance, then a forced smile. "You didn't drink that juice, did you?" he asked casually, and my blood froze. The air between us thickened with a silence that felt like a rope tightening around my neck. I forced a laugh, trying to mask my terror, but inside I felt like my heart was beating loud enough for him to hear. That question was not one a son should ever ask his parent. That question carried weight, menace, and secrets I wasn't ready to face. But I smiled anyway, pretending everything was fine, because deep down I knew I needed time. Time to figure out the truth, time to plan, and time to understand how the little boy I once carried in my arms had grown into someone who might wish me harm. I couldn't collapse now. I couldn't show him fear, not until I knew exactly what I was dealing with. So I played the role of a parent still trusting, still blind, all while every fiber of my being screamed that danger was sitting across the table for me. The final piece of this terrifying puzzle came sooner than I expected, and it shattered me in ways I'll never forget. A few days later, when the house was quiet and my son was out, I gathered the courage to take that container of juice to a small private lab downtown. My hands shook as I handed it over, telling the technician it was just a strange taste issue from a restaurant. She nodded, professional and unfazed, but I felt the weight of every heartbeat as I left. For 2 days I couldn't think straight, barely ate, and every sound in the house made me jump. Finally, the call came. I answered with my breath held, and her words were like a blade to the chest. We found traces of a sedative compound, strong enough to knock someone out cold. My knees buckled. The floor beneath me felt like it disappeared. I hung up, staring blankly at the wall, realizing the unthinkable truth. My son had put that in my drink. My own child, the boy I raised, the boy I sacrificed for, the boy I thought would protect me when I grew old. My mind raced through questions. Why? Was it hatred? Manipulation from someone else? Some hidden addiction? Nothing made sense, yet everything made sense in the silence of those empty rooms. That night, when he returned, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I confronted him, my voice trembling but firm. Why? I asked. His face went pale, his lips quivered, and for the first time I saw fear in his eyes, not mine, his. He tried to stammer out excuses, words like friends, dare, just a test. But the truth was etched into his expression. He had meant harm, and I had escaped it only by chance. My heart broke in 1,000 ways as I realized I was no longer safe in my own home, not even with the person I loved most. That night, I made a decision no parent ever wants to make. I left. I packed a small bag, called a close friend, and stayed away, knowing the boy I raised had crossed a line that could never be undone. So if you're watching this, I want to ask you, what would you have done in my place? Would you forgive, forget, or fight for justice? Tell me in the comments, and don't forget to let me know where you're watching from. And if this story shook you the way it shook me, please rate it, subscribe to Outstanding Stories, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because sometimes the scariest truths aren't about strangers. They're about the people we thought we knew best.